Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review and reaction for The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon Season 1, Episode 5. As we close in on the finale, what is this show setting up? And beyond all that, what are they setting up with Carol in the past?
Yeah, let's talk about that little bit of a Carol reveal that we got where we saw Daryl on a radio. He gets to talk to Carol for just a second, but it's a
Yeah.
little bit weird. And it, of course, goes all staticky when she's talking about came back. Who came back? Leave it in the comments for
Yeah.
us. We'll have our theories on that as well. And I mean, it's quite the cliffhanger.
It's something where there's a couple of different things at work here, and we'll get into both of these. It is the question of, okay, are they setting up something for season 2 of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon here, or are they just setting up something across the greater Walking Dead universe where, and a lot of shows do this, months down the road, they'll pay something like this off, and then they'll come back and be like, look at this, look at this, look at this. See, we're smart. We knew all along that we were going to set this up just so that you guys can feel like none of this was spur of the moment. And honestly, a lot of this stuff is really thought out. But, I know there's everything going on in France as well. We'll
Mhm.
talk about that. The cliffhanger of what is going on in the zombie Thunderdome with Daryl at the end of all of this.
Is Daryl dead? Of course not.
No.
But I mean, still, it was pretty frightening.
Okay, all right. Well, before we dive into anything more there, hit that subscribe button for more coverage of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon throughout the remainder of this season. We're also going to be getting into The Walking Dead The Ones Who Live, which is the Rick and Michonne spinoff when that premieres.
Mhm.
And if you do love really spooky, scary stuff, coming up later this week, The Fall of the House of Usher is premiering on Netflix. It is really, really good. We're going to have full coverage of every single episode of that.
Yeah, it's coming out on October 12th. It is really scary. We've had a chance to see the fall of the House of Usher a little early. It jump scared me right off the couch.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for something along those lines, that will be the show for you.
Okay. So there's a reason why I mentioned The Ones Who Live a minute ago, the Rick and Michonne spinoff, because this Caroline, could it be important for Daryl Dixon? Sure. If I had to put on a tinfoil hat as to what's going on here, and
Let's
this
get
is
into our theories.
okay, this is really going all across the Walking Dead universe, and I'll say this in particular because it ties to Fear the Walking Dead, and I know how a lot of people feel about Fear the Walking Dead, and they have not kept up on 8 seasons of this show.
I am one of those people. I have not, as much as I love Morgan. I loved him over on the original. I couldn't stay. I couldn't stick with it.
Well, Morgan is where I'm going with this because in the mid-season finale of Fear the Walking Dead, Morgan actively leaves that show, and Lenny James already come out and said that that was the end of him on Fear the Walking Dead,
Mhm.
unless he is completely blowing smoke up everybody's butt. I think he's being truthful. And when Morgan left, one of the things that he really noted is that he wanted to find Rick Grimes. And because Morgan has been away from The Walking Dead proper in that world for such an extreme period of time,
Mhm.
like he's not going to necessarily have all the information. So he's going to be trying to connect a lot of dots, trying to go from
Mhm.
point A to point B to point C. It makes some element of sense that Morgan would stop over, see Carol, maybe see some other people. And, I certainly don't think he's going to be there forever because the Rick and Michonne spinoff isn't set in the same place, presumably, as The Walking Dead proper. But I think whoever we have Carol mentioning here, I think it has to be important enough that we're going to care when it's revealed potentially down the line. It's not going to be some red shirt who was in like 3 episodes of The Walking Dead proper. They have to be somebody important, but at the same time, it can't be such that it's a distraction for everything else that's going on Daryl Dixon itself.
It was a very interesting radio call as well because, we had this sort of moment where Daryl felt like he could sense that something wasn't exactly right with
Yeah.
Carol. I mean, they have like a really spiritual connection, and they always have, which is, of course, interesting, of course, because we're talking about spirituality this
Yeah.
season as well with everything with Laurent. We'll get more into that as well. But he could sense that something was off when he made that call in the past before everything happened. He got taken off to the boat and
Yeah.
all of that. That even though Carol was like, come on, like, you know me, I can take care of myself. There was a pause before she said that, almost like somebody was standing there with her. And I'm not saying like somebody's there being like, say what I say or else sort
Yeah.
of thing, but like maybe just somebody that makes the group kind of uncomfortable is back.
Okay, here's one of the two problems with my Morgan theory. Number one, I don't know how she would react that way to Morgan. I don't necessarily see him being a catalyst for really any unease at all at this point.
No.
Number two, this is where I have tried everyone to figure out the timeline of the Walking Dead universe, but let's be real here for a moment. After Rick Grimes died or left or whatever, there was a big time jump on The Walking Dead. Fear the Walking Dead has had big time jumps. We did Dead City. It had a time jump. There are so many time jumps in this world. It is impossible, for me at least. Maybe there are some experts. Let's check in the comment section to see what the experts think about everything. No, there's always a lot of confusion about that. So I can't place exactly where Morgan is and when.
Yeah, and I mean, these two things don't necessarily have to be connected. There could be something that's going on that's making Carol uncomfortable or whatever. And then there could be, static, came back, static, somebody else came back, and that these things aren't necessarily connected unless it's like she just has some sort of uncomfort with like what this person has brought back. And it might not be like, oh, it's Morgan that's back. I'm upset about that. But maybe that person has information that has made her unease.
Okay, we spent a lot of time talking about this conversation as opposed to a lot of the other stuff in the flashback timeline. For me, it's just because I don't care about the rest of the flashback timeline. If I'm being totally honest, none of this worked. I enjoyed.
Oh, wow. You didn't even want me to put my hard
No,
hat on.
no,
You're just like coming for that timeline.
Listen.
Okay, I have my hard hat
Yeah,
on.
no,
Let's go.
Sometimes the take is too blistering that there's no time. Sometimes you just have to let the warmth just wash over you.
Oh,
and
my goodness.
I like everything in France a lot in this episode, and I think there's some really cool stuff happening. But just for all of the buildup as to why Daryl left, like how he ended up in France, this all just felt weak sauce. I just didn't care about any of these people. I didn't care about the way in which they set it up. Nothing like popped off the screen or was memorable. I mean, I like the actor Martin Martinez, who's the younger man on this show. He's on Magnum PI, which I watch. I give him some applause for this, but it's just like the rest of that timeline. If you were gonna have a mystery around this, and you guys have played this out like it was a mystery, it just wasn't imposing or interesting compared to everything else that Daryl has gone through. It's just like, really? This is how Daryl ended up here. After everything Daryl has gone through, these people have done this. Okay. Okay.
Oh, well, okay. Like, yeah, okay. It wasn't that interesting, but that's okay for me. I mean, it's just not everything. Listen, with this show, I mean, with all the supply runs we saw every single week, where it was like, oh, we need to go and get this. Let's go on a supply run. And, walkers show up. Everybody gets out except for a red shirt, and we have the supplies. Like, I mean, that went on and on and on, and we all still tuned in every single week to see what was going on. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense. He stumbles into this situation where he's run out of gas. friendly person has come to
Yeah.
help him, is basically like, we need you to collect walkers. Clearly there's some sort of like, this is going towards the experiment. We saw them putting walkers up into like, some cargo where there's like flashing lights and all kinds of other nonsense going on. Like, it felt like that's what was happening. Or like, okay, we're gonna collect these for Janae for everything that's gonna go on the boat, but how is he gonna end up on the boat? Was kind of like, that was a bit of the letdown. It was like, oh, here's the rules: no fighting, no this. Oh, you're fighting now. Your walker food just going onto the ship because you had a fight. Okay, like what?
It's just that they established these experimentations early on this season. That felt like such a cool concept, and I still believe that it is.
It is.
I just wanted there to be more standout moments surrounding all of this, including, like you said, how Daryl ends up on the boat in the first place. It felt like they had a cool concept. They knew where they were going. They did not know how to get Daryl from point A to point B.
They just needed to betray them. That's what they needed to do. That it needed to be something where it's like, okay, if you get us walkers, we'll give you fuel or whatever it is you need. Okay, cool. We have enough walkers and we have new guys coming in. We'll take the weakest of the bunch that aren't doing well enough and we'll send them to the boat to be used as food. That there just needed to be, a betrayal on top of a betrayal.
Is the payoff still interesting? Sure. The cliffhanger at the end of this episode, it's great. Yes.
And everything on the boat. Like, there was like such action going on that boat. See that walker, like, I love fast zombies. I'm into
Okay,
fast
all right.
zombies. So the minute that zombie was just like scurrying up the stairs and was like fast, I was like, ooh, okay. We already know that there's the burners that, have skin that's like acid or whatever, but we didn't know what other types of walkers were going to be popping up, and here we are, fast walkers.
We've got fast walkers, we've got burners, we've got the super zombie creations of Janae. Like, that is the Thunderdome showdown that's happening.
I'm very curious to know what the deal is going to be with that particular walker, because it looks like they're strong, they're fast. I mean, they're probably also a burner. Is it just like every experiment is all into this one super walker, which is something that, we talked about in past videos too. Is she trying to like create a whole bunch of walkers that are like fast, strong, that can, basically be her group of people that she can unleash on people when they're not doing what she wants?
You know what it reminds me of? At least this walker and this idea. There was a show on NBC called Heroes that was good for one season, and then it was terrible the rest of the way. But there was this character on there named Siler who would like take all the superpowers of everybody else. And at a certain point, it was just like, okay, this character is way too overpowered. I don't know if this is work. But the point is that having a character who can take the best traits or the most dangerous traits from all of these other zombies and putting them into one, it's a dangerous, interesting proposition. I think the problem that Janae is going to run into here, and I at least believe tinfoil hat that this is going to be a problem, because you can't control walkers unless she manages to find a way to actually, I don't know, have them follow orders. None of this other stuff matters. Sure, she can sick this zombie on Daryl and they can have this fight in the Thunderdome that Daryl is inevitably going to win, and it's going to be really cool to watch. But how can you ensure that this potential army is going to do anything for you?
At the very least, they're not going to turn on her, because she's got like a whole squad of goons who are going to be the front line, who are going to like bring the walker to the pit, bring the walkers to the front line. She's going to be way in the back, up on her mic, BioShock style, just being like, everyone, everything is okay. Welcome to the rapture.
She isn't... Yes, the BioShock comparison works.
It really felt like that when she was up at the mic. That scene was gold. It was so well done. It was so well written. It was very well performed. I felt it sort of wash over everybody. It was really well done.
Well, and this is why I think the show has established Janae the way that they have, and why she's threatened by somebody like Laurent, because she really is into the idea of power. Like, that is very much clear. She likes having control.
And she's a powerful speaker.
Yeah, so she is able to sort of convince and rule this part of the zombie apocalypse, I think, in a way that even none of these other characters in the past have. I mean, we've seen Negan, we've seen the Croat, we've seen all of these different leaders, and while some of them have charisma, like Negan certainly has charisma, I think the difference is that Janae can make people feel a sense of comfort that I think a
Mhm.
lot of other characters in this world can't. And I think that that is why Laurent is such a threat, because he gives people a sense of comfort through hope. And that's not something that Janae can provide in the same exact way. So it's
No.
her prerogative to try to figure out how to continue to brainwash in her own way all of these residents into thinking that she's constantly has control. And I think that's why this showdown with Daryl and Superwalker is so important, because it's just like, anybody who crosses me, this is gonna be what happens, and I'm gonna show you guys so you guys can see it. Everything is above board, it's transparent.
Absolutely. She's ruling with fear, but she's also trying to rule with empowerment to make people feel like they're part of something, which is, I mean, we've seen a lot of pretty interesting rulers throughout the Walking Dead universe who have done the same thing, that have tried to make people, there's fear, but there's some sort of comfort in it as well. Of course, we've seen people just rule with fear in general, but there's something about Janae and the way that she speaks to them that you could see it with the crowd of how they really felt, and that they felt like they were part of something with her.
I think the biggest thing I appreciate for now is that I don't think Janae is done. And I think, I sort of think a lot about Negan and the Saviors, or the Governor, or like some of these other villains on this world. It kind of feels like, okay, they've already got a lot of what they want. They've got their compound, they've got their community. How ambitious are they beyond that? I think Janae is still very ambitious. I think Janae, like, she probably wants all of Europe or something to that extent.
Yeah, we've seen people with smaller communities, and here's Janae, who's basically like, I'm going to be the ruler of all of France. Like, it's going to be me. I'm going to be, the top dog, and all of you guys are going to fall into line, or else this is going to happen. And I think it's very smart for her, instead of just, going through all of this, she finally captures Daryl, captures Laurent, Isabelle's there, Quinn is in the doghouse for letting this
Yeah.
all go sideways. But it makes a lot more sense for her to have Laurent by her side to basically be like, see, even this other person that you guys all had hope in, he believes in me. He's by my side. And I know we haven't seen that moment like
Yeah.
fully come out together here, but like it's a really, it could be a really important moment, except that Daryl's going to kill this walker and everything's going to go sideways for her. And then everyone's going to be like,
It's pretty funny how much she is clearly underestimating Daryl, where you should know at this point, Janae, that Daryl Dixon has the thickest set of plot armor to ever exist.
I
You're never going to get rid of Daryl that way. Okay, and
No.
even without the meta stuff thrown in there, Daryl's clearly somebody who managed to survive a lot to even make it to this point.
Mhm.
Why couldn't you find like 3 of these zombies and like throw 3 of them? One, you think he's going to have problems with just one supercharged zombie, and that is going to be something that stops him. She's setting herself up for a fall here. But let's get into Isabelle for a moment,
Mhm.
because here's my take on what's going on with her. She's got to survive, man. She's just doing whatever she's got to do in any particular moment. And she's using whatever skill set she has, including manipulation, faith, making other people feel comfortable around her. She is a very smart character, and she's going to operate in a different way than somebody like Daryl. She's not a bull in a china shop. She's just not going to knock everything over all the time.
No. And I mean, clearly there are people there that are trying to get messages to her where it's like, oh, try these eggs. They're from a friend. And
Yeah.
it's like a message there. And yeah, she's really struggling because she wants to stay on course with, her faith and how she feels about things. But then she's in this situation where, Quinn's talking about redemption and that he really is like, let me feed you, clothe you, take care of you. Oh, you're not ready to be with me? No problem. I got nothing but time. Like I'm willing to do whatever it takes and have as much patience as you ever need. I'll always just be here. That has he really turned a corner? Seems like it. It seems like all this time he really just wants Isabelle back and he's willing to do whatever it takes. So when she was like deciding to like, oh, I'm gonna make a shiv out of this, I was
Yeah.
kind of like, okay, well, why would you do it in his compound? Like at that point, you might as well sort of seduce him into taking you out somewhere where
Mhm.
you can do something else. You can actually get away. Like if you decide to do this in that room, then you got to get through all his guards to get out of there. And that's just not, what?
She's thinking a little bit recklessly in that
It wasn't a
moment.
great plan.
See, I understand where Isabelle is coming from in the sense that I don't trust Quinn either. Like
No.
I think almost everybody on this show is up to no good, with like a very few small exceptions, and Isabelle being one of them. I think despite whatever he may be saying, and maybe some of it is true, history matters a lot in this world because you don't have a lot of other stuff to really rely on. And the history is the history here. And I think Isabel's in game, it's very much about Laurent. It's not about, okay, I'm going to stay here with Quinn and then, oh, we're going to go see Jana. And it's like, okay, I'm in a position where I don't have any control, where I don't have any ability to say anything. That's just not going to be for her.
I'm just really glad that they brought Isabelle and Daryl back together this episode. I was really worried that it was going to be like the finale or
Yeah.
something like that, but it was, as much as I didn't like them getting split up in the last episode, what I did really like was all the stuff with Laurent and Daryl. There was a lot there to unpack with each other, where finally I got like, I'd been waiting for this sort of these survivalist tips and how to like,
Yeah.
deal with a fish and get it ready to eat, and that I wanted to see Daryl teaching Laurent, and then we saw Laurent sort of teaching Daryl about spirituality. Tell me about the people that you love, and then seeing him pray and be like, Daryl doesn't believe, but I believe, and he doesn't
Mhm.
pray, so I'm gonna pray for RJ and Carol and all these people that he mentioned. And it's a nice like back and forth. It's not just Daryl stepping into sort of this parental figure that's like, I'm going to teach you how to survive, boy, but it's going to
Yeah.
be, also Laurent being like, well, I'm going to teach you how to have a little bit more than just survival. You don't have to just survive. You can also have other things like faith and hope and, build into other things that aren't just like, how do I get by today?
I like that relationship a lot. I like how they're playing into it, letting us sort of take some of the layers off of Daryl, but also allow us to understand better. Okay, here's why Laurent cares as much as he does about Daryl, because everybody else in his life is
Oh,
leaving. And
that was so sad when he
yeah,
cut the boat and we saw Daryl just lose his
yeah,
mind. Like that was a really hard scene to watch when he was grabbing him and, swearing at him. It was just, you could see like the tears bubbling in Laurent's eyes, and he was just like, I don't care what you're saying
yeah,
to me. Like, you're the only person I have left that I trust, that I care about, that I can tell cares about me as well, because you're yelling at me.
yeah.
So, I, I'm not sorry I cut this boat.
He's still a kid, and kids are gonna make emotional, reactionary moves, and that's what happened here. But he did it for what was in his mind a very benevolent reason.
Yeah.
Now, we do only have one episode left, and yes, we know that there is a season two, and the season two is already filming, and so we don't have to worry about that sort of stuff. I hope in the finale they're not getting rid of Janae. I just feel like there's too much meat still on this bone for them to sort of cast that character aside. This whole season has been about sort of building up this larger world that's going on in France. And I don't need Janae to stick around like 5 seasons or anything like that, but I'm not done seeing all of this yet.
Okay, I still have my hard hat on. I just want to see Daryl stay in France. And
Mhm.
they've kind of brought that up in this episode as well, where he was like, hey, I made a promise. I have to get back. I made a promise to other people. And, it was said to him sort of like, Yeah, but promises can change and shift when, you have other people that you now care for that care about you.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay for promises to have to shift because something else has come into your life that is really important to you that you need to be part of. So they've set it up that he'll be able, I hope, to let go of that promise. I mean, just put Carol in France.
There's always ways to make any of this happen, and it's clear that this is where his value is most at this point. And that,
Yes.
yes, Daryl can be useful back in the Commonwealth, back in America. Like, I don't deny any of that, but he is especially of use right now in France, and that he can actually sort of set this world in a new direction.
And he's really growing out there. Like, I really liked Dead City a lot. But one
Yeah.
of the issues that I had with that show and that I've had with the Maggie character the whole time is that she cannot move on. She's not growing. She's just stuck. And she has been for years, ever since everything that happened with Glenn. And I understand that was a really big deal that happened. It was a really traumatic thing that happened. But we're so many years later, and there's no growth with this character. And Daryl has had some growth, but being in a different country and being with different people and having someone like Laurent around who's really spiritual and Isabelle who's also really spiritual and just opening up these other doors to him, I feel like we're already seeing a lot of growth with this character that he has long needed to have. It's been slow, but it's been growing. But now it feels like it's the world is really opening up to him and he's seeing things in a completely different way because he's in a relationship with Laurent and with Isabelle where it is give and take more, where it's like, oh, I'll teach you to survive.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to teach you to be more spiritual. There's more to life than just, feeding yourself.
Tip of the cap to Norman, because I feel like this is something you probably really prioritized in the early going. If you're going to keep playing Daryl,
Yeah.
this is going to be what we get.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for the finale, for what they're going to bring to that table. So we will have more on that next week. Hit that subscribe button so you guys don't miss our coverage of Daryl Dixon, as well as to follow the House of Usher, which we mentioned earlier. And thank you as well to our patrons for your support. We really appreciate
Thank you.
that. And we'll see you guys here next time.